Hey everyone, today I want to tell you a story about a time when Europe started to learn and grow again after years of being stuck. It's called the Carolingian Renaissance. And it all started when a powerful king named Charlemagne decided that learning and knowledge were really important. Charlemagne wasn't just a king who fought wars. He cared a lot about reading, writing, and education. He wanted to bring back the great ideas from ancient Rome and Greece and mix them with Christian beliefs. To make this happen, he helped open schools, supported better writing and art, and worked on making buildings more beautiful. This wasn't just about copying old stuff, it was about making it useful and meaningful again. One of the smartest people around him was a monk named Alcuin of York. He came from England and became a teacher in Charlemagne's court. He taught all kinds of subjects like grammar, math, astronomy, and religion. He even collected a lot of books and started a library. He loved teaching so much that even when he got older, he kept on helping people learn in France. That's how much he cared. Another important person was Theodulf of Orleans. He came from Spain, where he had to leave because of war, and he ended up working closely with Charlemagne. He became a bishop and helped improve the Bible by using different sources from all over Europe, including Old Hebrew texts. People like him worked hard to keep important knowledge alive. Even though most of this learning happened among church leaders and in the king's court, it still had a big effect. One big thing they did was make writing easier to read. They created a new style of writing with both big and small letters, called Carolingian minuscule. This style later helped inspire the way we write today. But learning didn't just suddenly start under Charlemagne. Before that, other places like Spain and Ireland were already doing cool things with learning. Irish monks set up schools and copied books by hand, helping keep old knowledge alive. Because Charlemagne united many parts of Europe, it brought peace, and people could focus on things like farming, learning, and building towns. Places that used to be small trade centers became full towns with markets and people making and selling things. One big town back then was called Dorstad. Farming improved too, and big estates made more food, which helped towns grow even more. However, not everything was perfect. One reason for the economic growth was the slave trade. As Charlemagne's army took over lands in Eastern Europe, they captured people and sold them to other countries, especially in the Muslim world, where there was a big demand. It's a sad part of the story, but it played a role in helping the economy grow. Some historians say that the Carolingian Renaissance saved Western civilization. Others argue it wasn't really a full Renaissance like the later Italian one because it didn't reach everyone. Most of the changes happened in churches and among scholars. And even during that time, people felt like the excitement for learning was already fading. A scholar named Walafrid Strabo said that fewer people were interested in wisdom anymore. One big problem back then was that not many people could read or write Latin well, not even some priests. Charlemagne wanted to fix this, so he set up schools and brought in smart people from all over Europe. He even created a plan called the Charter of Modern Thought to encourage more education. Teachers like Peter of Pisa, Paulinus of Aquileia, Paul the Deacon, and especially Alcuin, all helped build a solid education system. Alcuin created a basic curriculum called the Trivium and Quadrivium, which included grammar, logic, math, music, and more. They also worked on better handwriting and made Latin easier to understand, so people from different countries could read and write to each other. This helped with both learning and running the government. And here's something cool. The idea of Europe being one big cultural family really started during this time. Countries that followed Western Christianity began to see themselves as part of one group. During the 800s, people working in monasteries wrote more than 100,000 books by hand. Today, around 6,000 or 7,000 of those books still survive. Thanks to them, we still have writings from famous thinkers like Cicero, Caesar, and Horace. Before this time, those writings were almost forgotten. And after Charlemagne helped bring back learning and culture, something important changed about how people spoke Latin, and it affected almost everything. In those days, people didn't really think of Latin as a separate language. It was just the way they wrote down what they spoke every day, like Old French or Old Spanish. So even though a word might be written in Latin, people pronounced it like they would in their own language. For example, in Spain, the word for century was spelled século, but they said something like skeglo, just like how we say night, instead of pronouncing the K in night. But things began to change when priests and monks from places like England and Ireland started using Latin. Since they weren't used to the local way of speaking, they pronounced the words exactly as they were spelled. Charlemagne's court liked this clear and proper way of speaking and made it the new standard. This caused Latin to sound stiff and unnatural. For instance, a word like viridarium, which means orchard, had to be read slowly, syllable by syllable. Viridarium. Before, it would have sounded more like the everyday French word for orchard. But now, it became hard for normal people to understand, especially during church services. So, the church had a problem. People couldn't follow the sermons anymore. To fix this, a church meeting in the city of Tours told priests to start preaching in the local language, what they called rustic romance, or plain speech that regular folks used. But during Mass and prayers, they still had to stick with the new Latin pronunciation. Because of this change, people didn't know whether to read something in the old everyday way or the new fancy Latin way. Writers in France started changing how they spelled things so it was clearer. This led to new writing styles and helped start early versions of French and Spanish as written languages. Some of the first examples of this include the Oaths of Strasbourg and the Sequence of Saint Eulalia. As this trend spread to other parts of Europe, more people started writing in their own languages too. Now let's talk about how this cultural change showed up in other ways, like in art. The Carolingian art period only lasted about 100 years, from around 800 to 900, but it was very important. For the first time in a long while, artists in Northern Europe started using styles from ancient Rome. This helped lead to the Romanesque and Gothic art styles that came later. They made beautiful books, shiny metal objects, small statues, wall paintings, and even mosaics, some of which still exist today. Architecture changed too. Charlemagne wanted to build churches and palaces that looked like the old Roman and Christian buildings. He also added some design ideas from the Byzantine Empire. This mix created a new and unique style. One famous example is the first version of St. Mark's Church in Venice. Between the years 768 and 855, people built 27 new cathedrals, over 400 monasteries, and 100 royal homes. That's a huge amount of building in less than a century. Money also got an upgrade. Around 755, Charlemagne's dad, Pepin the Short, decided to fix the messy coin system in their kingdom. There were too many kinds of money, and it was confusing. So Pepin closed the smaller mints and made sure the king had control over the bigger ones. They also stopped using gold coins and switched to silver. The new silver coin was called a denarius or denier in French. It was about 94% pure silver and weighed around 2 grams. This coin became the base for the money system. There were also other money units like the shilling and the pound, but they were just ways to measure value, not actual coins. For example, a shilling was worth 12 pennies. Even though the new coins were better, many traders didn't like them. They preferred gold coins used in other places. The rulers had to make laws forcing people to accept the silver coins. Even with those problems, this system influenced money in places like England, where it stayed in use for hundreds of years.